start, even though there's just 4 of us? You going to stay up here? No? Okay. Just be that way. Just be that way. Just go on downstairs. Ooh, Kenneth. Hi, Barbara. We love you. Okay.
Can you tell when I'm on if I don't sign in?
No.
Because I can never sign in.
Okay. Text. Can you text Ken?
Yeah.
Text Ken.
Okay.
Because if you text Ken, then we can know that you're there.
Oh, okay.
That would be helpful. That'd be great. That'd be good. Today, what I wanted to, are there any things left over from what we've been talking about with baptism or any of the sacraments or anything that you want to ask or talk about?
I was just thinking, the last couple of days that I guess I didn't realize that there's still so much work to be done after you're baptized. I figured once you were baptized, you were good to go. You still have work to do.
Till the day you die. That's right. There really is. And a lot of people do believe that, baptism does it all. And so the earlier you move, like when Episcopalians moved confirmation, moved full initiation back from confirmation back to baptism, that kind of truncated the time of what you thought you had to do for education and things. And I think what makes me sadder than almost anything else is that when kids get confirmed, they really do treat it like a graduation. They really do. And it just makes me so sad, because it really should be exactly the opposite. They really should treat it as not a full membership, but a full investment in the church. Their involvement in the church should become greater, and they should take on more roles in the church and become more invested. And they don't. They leave. They don't come to church regularly. They pull out of things that they were involved in, so we lose them as liturgical ministers. And it really makes me sad, because it's just when they get to a point where they could, where their voices could be heard, which is why I'm so glad Zach is going to be on the vestry, because I think he's going to bring a different level of hearing younger people's voice that we really need. We really need to hear him. And he was really good at our vestry meeting. So he didn't say a lot, but what he did say was really, I think he's going to add a lot to it. So what work do you think you have to do after baptism?
Well, like you say, take on other roles in the church and commit yourself to being there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We really do. The role of the laity in our catechism. Hi, Pat. In our catechism, I don't think we read that role of ministers of the laity, didn't we? The ministers of the baptized. I don't think most people even know that that's in there, what the ministry of the laity is. And I don't think we consider that as the foundational ministry, that it's not priesthood, it's not any kind of ordained ministry, it's the ministry of the baptized that's foundational to every other ministry. And out of the ministry of the baptized, everything else comes. And ministry of the baptized never leaves. It's foundational to every other ministry that we do. So if it's not emphasized, And if it's not looked at as the most important ministry within the church, within the liturgy, it's the most important ministry, is your ministry. If we don't emphasize that, then we've got things skewed, okay? And I don't think a lot of people really realize, that it's your work that makes worship happen, not mine. So I can kind of lead it, but if you don't do the work of it, then it doesn't, liturgy really doesn't happen. So how have you grown in worship over your lifetime, or understanding of worship over your lifetime, or in the time that you've been here, or in the time that I've been here?
Well, as I said, my parents never took me to church. If I went to church, I went with an aunt or an uncle or my father was clear. When I decided to get married and my fiance was an Episcopalian, at the age of 19, I was baptized. First, that was my first
Wow.
permanent thing to do. And eventually I did not get confirmed until I was having my children confirmed.
Wow.
So, and that was a long time ago, but 3 of my children married Catholics.
Uh-huh.
One of them is a practicing Catholic, the rest are not. And the girls are the only ones that go to church. The sons I cannot look into.
Right. What do you know why? Have they talked to you about it?
No, not really. No, not a conversation. I mean, I
Yeah.
try to twist her arms.
Right.
My birthday, would everybody come to church?
Yeah, and they won't. Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it's not that they don't believe.
Right,
They've had their children baptized.
right, right. It was a fight with Andrew to get him to go to church, But you'll embarrass me if you don't go to church, That was my twist, But and then he'd come and cause trouble. So, but what I hear from young people, because I'm asking a lot of young people, what their issues are, and a lot of them are saying that they're afraid to come to church, which is kind of interesting.
Afraid of what?
What I was on the Labyrinth call yesterday, and there was a young woman, and what they said is that they're afraid they're not going to be accepted. And a lot of it came out of, sometimes it's LGBTQ, or they're afraid they're not going to be accepted the way they dress, or the way they talk, or, that they're coming into a church with older people, and they just don't feel like they fit. And so they, rather than kind of make a place for themselves or find a place for themselves, they just don't bother.
I saw something on Facebook a couple days ago that one of my old teacher friends had posted, but it was this great big table with a lot of people sitting around it, and the caption said, "You go into church late and everyone stares at you like they were more prepared than you were, and you feel like you're not welcome. You go to an AA meeting and everyone is glad to see you and welcomes you in." That's what this post said anyway. So
Yeah.
she's just encouraging churches to be, because she's a very faithful person, and she's just like, we've got to change this.
Right.
We can't make people, no matter how they come in the doors, late, early, how they're dressed, everything.
Right.
Because I know a lot of churches, you do feel uncomfortable.
Right.
Maybe not afraid, but uncomfortable.
Right.
When you walk in.
Right.
Whether it's later on time, just with strangers that you don't know.
Right.
So I think that's an important thing to remember.
There was one couple that came in here, and they walked in, and it was so open when they came in, and they got such a big greeting out of me that I scared them to death. And they haven't come back. So it was, and the sign of peace was too big. And, and they really haven't. They had really big eyes most of the time that they were here. So, but I do think it's really important. I think, having David and you stand at the door and be really ready, and then passing them off to somebody else so that, they know that they're welcome and greeted.
But not too much, like you said.
But not too much, right? Right. But I do think that does make a difference in maintaining people. I do think the one thing we don't do well is we don't have enough follow-up. Like, I think we need to have a newcomers dinner, like maybe every quarter. So that I really do. Because they're not getting to meet each other, and they're not getting to meet, like, the parishioners, leadership or whatever. They're not getting to ask questions. If they have questions about the church, those things are not getting addressed. So I think that's a piece that we really need to work on. So, well, what I wanted to talk about today was you guys always come to the Holy Week liturgies, okay? Is there anything about Holy Week, the liturgies that we celebrate, that you have any questions about? Or you just don't know that you have questions? Bingo. The word that I have up on the chart, you've seen that word before? So it's Pasch. And it comes out of, really it comes out of the Jewish text. And it means passage. Okay? So the passage through the Red Sea, and we say Christ is our Pasch, our Paschal lamb, the Paschal candle. So that's what we're talking about. It's the passage, and the passage from death to life. So we enter the Paschal season, okay, the passage season. So anytime you're talking about Easter time, you're talking about Paschal, okay? So it's the passage time. And for our Jewish sisters and brothers, they will celebrate Seder, they will celebrate the Passover, and we'll celebrate Passover too. Okay, so Jesus passes from what? In the Passover, Israelites passed from what? When Israelites had their Passover, what did they pass from? What did they pass through? They left what and went to what? What country did they leave? They left Egypt, okay? And what did they pass through? They passed through the Sinai. But before they went to Sinai, what did they pass through? So they passed through the Red Sea. So this Red Sea is kind of like the image, both for the Israelites and for us. Okay, so the passage through the waters of the Red Sea is real important, is an important image for the Jewish people, and it's also an important image for us. Okay, so the Passover passage from through the Red Sea, and what do you get on the other side of the Red Sea? Yeah, but when you go through the Red Sea, over here they were dead. And on the other side, what do they come to? Freedom. Exactly. Freedom and life. Okay? Because they could have died in the waters of the Red Sea, but they didn't. They came to freedom. So this story in Moses is about freedom. Okay? It's about the passage from death to life. Okay? It's that kind of movement. And if you listen to the story, if you listen when the waters, when the baptismal waters are blessed at the Easter Vigil, you're going to hear us talk about all the different kinds of waters. And one of the major waters, it's as Moses and the Israelites passed through the waters of the Red Sea. You're going to hear talk about Noah. You're going to hear talk about the waters of creation. Okay, so calling back all of those primordial kinds of waters, and then relating what Jesus does, Jesus' resurrection, to those waters. Just like in the past, Jesus walked through those waters, or people walked through the waters, then the waters of baptism are that kind of death to life for us, from slavery to freedom, okay? From captivity to new life, okay? So that would be our Jewish sisters and brothers. Now, the Passover for Jesus is what? 40 days of Lent, okay? So think about Jesus' last week. Think about that Holy Week. What does he pass through? Passover. How does he pass over? Think especially about the last 3 days of his life. Like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and into Easter. So what comes before his crucifixion? Right? Right? What's he have before that? Trial. That's all part of this crucifixion thing. What's he have on Thursday?
Washing of the feet.
Yep, washing of the feet. Okay, so he has a meal, right? He has a meal with his disciples. And the meal in the four Gospels, it varies. Whether it's called, three of the Gospels will talk about it as a Passover meal, as Jesus eating the Passover meal and then going to his death. In the Gospel of John, it says it's the night before the Passover meal. Okay, that he eats the Passover before the Passover, okay? Because it's this crucifixion that John wants to focus on, okay? And all three Gospels, if you've paid attention, which you have, to the reading of the Passion on Palm Sunday, because we hear all three Gospels on Palm Sunday, they're all different. Every single one of them are different. Okay, and then the gospel that we hear on, the Passion that we hear on Good Friday is always the same. Okay, so every year, in year A, we'll hear from Matthew. Then this year, what Passion are we going to read? We're in year B, so we hear from, what have we been listening to most of this year? Mark. So we're going to hear the Passion from Mark. Okay? And Mark is really, really stark. Okay? In this year, we're going to hear, my God, why did you forsake me? Okay? We don't hear that in other Gospels, in other Passion readings. Okay? We get it all mixed up. We think we do. Okay? We think we hear that in other readings. We don't. We are not going to hear about the good thief. We're not going to hear that this year. We have to wait until next year to hear about that. Hear about that in Luke. Okay, we're not going to. There's several. We're not going to hear about Jesus telling John, or the beloved disciple, "This is your mother. Mother, this is your son." That comes on Good Friday every year. Okay, so all of the passion narratives are just a little bit different because they come out of different time frames, different gospels. Okay, they focus on a little bit different. They're trying to tell us different things. And they come because the gospel has had a trajectory trying to tell us a different thing. So what is the Gospel of Mark trying to do? Where does Mark start? The Gospel of Mark starts. Does it have a birth story? Does it have a nativity story in the Gospel of Mark? Matthew starts with the Magi, right? And Luke starts with the angels, right? And John starts with, "In the beginning was the Word," right? Does Mark start with a nativity? You don't know? So we kind of ran out, right? Think about the crib. We have Magi and we have shepherds. That pretty much fills up the crib, right? And then we have, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh," and then we talk about light, and the light was the beginning, and so we have a whole bunch of stuff about light, and that is one of the readings we hear during Christmas time. So that comes from John. That's sort of like a birth story. But do we hear anything in Mark? Mark's the first gospel. So do you think he has a birth story in there? First that was written. Mark was the first that was written. It was written in around 50. So probably 10, 15, 20 years after Jesus dies. So pretty close to Jesus' death. So is it going to start with a birth story? Not. So it doesn't have a birth story. It starts right with the baptism of Jesus. Starts right with his mission. Doesn't care about his early years. Okay? Doesn't start with that at all. Starts right with his mission. And it talks a lot about, you'll have a lot of stories about exorcisms in it. You'll have a lot of stories about Jesus casting out the demons. You'll have a lot of stories about healings. You'll have a lot of different kinds of parables in it. Not the same parables. You won't hear about the prodigal son. You won't hear about any of that. It's shorter. It's a whole lot shorter gospel than any of the other ones. And when you get to the Passion, it is stark. It is one of the saddest passions that we've got in the whole Scripture. I mean, it leaves you up in the air and just kind of, what just happened? And the resurrection ends with the women going to the tomb, and it says they saw that the tomb was empty, and they ran away so afraid they didn't tell anybody. And it ends like that. The gospel ends with the women running away and not telling anybody. Okay? How can you have a resurrection with nobody telling anybody that Jesus was raised from the dead? Eventually, they probably did tell somebody because they had to tell somebody, because if they didn't tell somebody, we wouldn't know about it. But that's the way Mark ends. So it's a really stark gospel. And it has, my God, why did you forsake me? Has that kind of language. Jesus just sad, just anguish would be the word for this gospel. Okay? That would be Mark. And so these, once we get into these days, it goes through it. The day starts and it doesn't stop. Okay? Have you ever had a day where you've had multiple days and it felt like one day?
Like Groundhog Day.
Like Groundhog Day, yeah. But where you've started into an event and the event just kept going and going through multiple days, that it was a vigil, that you kept vigil for multiple days.
I think when my father passed away and we were planning his funeral, just from the time he died, he went to the hospital and be with my mom. Just those next few days seemed like they just ran into one another.
Right. What happened to your clock during those days?
Oh yeah, it was all messed up.
It was all messed up. Did you keep appointments during those days?
No, I had to change everything.
Everything went away. So chronos, chronological time, went away. And what kind of time did you enter? Kairos time, God's time. You enter God's time. All time goes away. You enter God's time. You enter Kairos time. And you begin to vigil. Okay? You begin to, and what kind of activities do you do during vigiling time? All of them are different. That's exactly right. Some families have, certain practices that they do. In my family, we would always go to one particular, everybody would choose one particular funeral home that every member of the family would go to. And it would always be the same funeral home. Even if we lived in different parts of the city or, had to come in from the country to the funeral home, it would always be the same one because we knew where everything was and it felt like home. And I was always the instigator. Can you believe that? I instigated my cousins. I just bossed them around just like unmercifully. And when my grandfather died, they would always have coffee, free coffee downstairs that they could make. And I organized all of my cousins into this restaurant serving team. And all my aunts and uncles, when they came down, we made coffee for them, and then we made them pay for it. Even though you didn't have to pay for coffee, we made our aunts and uncles pay for it because I wanted the nieces and nephews, I wanted my grandfather's grandchildren to pay for flowers. And I didn't want anybody to give us the money. I wanted the grandchildren to get flowers for my grandfather. And I felt like that was important, and we were going to do it, by golly, and my aunts and uncles were going to pay for the flowers, but they were going to pay for it by paying us for the coffee that we made them. And by golly, we got the nicest set of flowers you have ever seen. Huh?
That just sounds like so strange. Have people pay for coffee at a place like that?
At a place like that? Well, we did, in Kentucky, you vigil over several days. You're in the funeral home for several days. So like you might go on a Wednesday, and the funeral won't happen until Friday. So you're there Wednesday all day, Thursday all day, and then you have the funeral on Friday morning. So people come and go all of those days. And so you have meals and dinners, and people come and go, and so you just stay with your family all those 2 or 3 days. And so that's, I had plenty of time to make my aunts and uncles pay for anything, And so that's the way we do it. So when I came up to Pennsylvania and you had visitation like the hour before, I just didn't plain know what to do. I mean, it's like, what? That's all? It's just not enough time, And so it's different practices in different places. So it's like, how do you keep vigil? Well, in Pennsylvania, then you have big meals after, and you tell the stories, and you do those things. I would have made them pay then. That's what I would have made them do. That's what I would have done. I just would have done it. I know I would have. So the vigiling, the telling the stories, the keeping vigil, the telling the stories is really important. What stories do you tell? So in a vigil, what kind of stories do you tell about the person who's died? Funny stories, okay? Stories you remember that are funny. They're good works. Sad stories? Not so much. Yeah. But you could tell things that, if you're sad, you might tell sad things. You also can tell stories about other members of your family. What defines you as a group. When I went to Sue's funeral, I had so much fun with your family, Jim. We played all these games. It was just a warm. I never felt more at home, even among my own family, as I felt in your family. Yeah. So, there are things that families do to keep this vigil time. And that's what these days are. They're keeping vigil. So once we start into it's called the Triduum. What's that? 3. What's that? Days. So 3 days. Okay? 3 days meshed into one. And the 3 days start on Thursday evening at sunset. Okay? And so Jewish days begin when? In the evening. So there's Shabbat. It's a Saturday day, right? But it begins on Friday night, right? Okay? So Friday starts Saturday. So same thing with the Triduum. So when we come together on Thursday, Maundy Thursday, what are we really starting? What day are we really starting when we come here? We're starting Good Friday, okay? So it's sunset Thursday to Good Friday. Then Friday to, when we celebrate on Friday night to Saturday. And we have the Easter Vigil here, okay? So the Easter Vigil is the beginning of what? Easter Sunday. And I don't think a lot of people really realize that the Easter Vigil is the start of Easter Sunday. And we don't end the Triduum until the end of Easter Sunday, until the sun goes down at Easter Sunday. Okay? It's not over until then. So from Thursday at sunset until sunset on Easter Sunday are the 3 days. Okay? And all of that time is one time. It's one day. And so when we start on Thursday, on Maundy Thursday, when we come and we wash the feet, we start that liturgy. And if you've noticed, do I dismiss people at the end of that liturgy? What happens at the end of the liturgy? You just leave. Okay, you leave in silence because you're not dismissed. You just walk out. Because why? You're coming back on Friday for the veneration of the cross. And it's the veneration of the cross that's the primary liturgy, not stations. Why would we do stations? Why would we do a liturgy in the middle of the day when the veneration of the cross is the primary liturgy? No, in preparation, but what are we doing? We're vigiling. So if you do stations in the middle of the day, it's not the primary liturgy. You're not getting out of doing the primary liturgy. You're just adding an extra thing in, okay, to keep vigil. And so you do your vigiling. You might want to come for the stations, but then you come back in the evening. When I was a kid, I hated Good Friday. My mother would make us walk to church 47 times a day. I'm telling you. You know, we'd go to church and we'd visit, and then we'd walk home. And then we'd go to church and we'd do the stations, and then we walk home. And then we go to church and we do the major service, and then we walk home. And then we go to church in the evening, and then we walk home. And I'm going, for crying out loud, Mother, how long does this thing last? And then we go to church on the next morning, and then we walk home. And it's like, you know, for crying out loud, how long does this day have to go on? And then we dye our Easter eggs on Saturday afternoon. And then we go to the Easter vigil. And it's like, okay, Mother, and we've got the fire lit now, Mother. Doesn't this day end? And then we go to church on Easter Sunday, and we go to one service, and then we walk home. And then we go to the second service, because on Easter Sunday you could receive communion twice instead of once, and then we walk home. And then they had three liturgies on Easter, and so then after we walked home, we go to the bakery in between, and then we go back. Then we'd eat our cherry kuka, and then we would walk home, and then we would go back to church for the third service, so we could receive communion for the third time on that Easter Sunday, and then we walk home. And thank God they didn't have an Easter Sunday night service, or we would have walked back for the fourth service for that Easter Sunday day. You know, and then on Thursday night, we'd be there Thursday night too, you know, and, you know, it was just, you know, and then they would have the vigil thing, you know, we'd have done that too. So it was like talk about vigil. We vigiled, I'm telling you, we vigiled. Vigiled. And so I learned how to vigil. You just vigiled all the time, okay? Okay, that was my family. Now, a lot of families didn't do that, but my mother loved it. I mean, she loved the liturgy, and so I came to love it too. And keeping all of that time, you know, understanding all of that time as one day. Okay? In the early church, it used to be that on Thursday, just like, what do our Jewish sisters and brothers do at the Passover? How do they deal with their homes? What do our Jewish sisters and brothers do like with Shabbat too? What do they have to do with their meals and things?
Eating kosher.
They're eating kosher. When do they prepare them? The day before. Okay? So they've got everything prepared so that they're not doing the work. Okay? And for Passover, they have to clean the house. They have to make sure that all of the yeast is out of their house. So that's where spring cleaning comes from. Okay? You clean. Yeah. We're not going to go there. But you get all of the yeast out of the house, because not even a crumb of yeast is to be in the house, because all of the bread is unleavened bread. And so you want and there's one reading that we read on Easter talking about the old bread, the leavened bread, that we don't want the old bread of the past, that we want the unleavened bread of new life, okay? And that was part of the history. So for Christians, we did the same thing. We cleaned out. What is Ash Wednesday about? Why do we have Shrove Tuesday? What is Shrove Tuesday about when you eat pancakes and you pull out all the things out of your cabinets? Huh? Right. It's a feast day before the fast, right? But you're cleaning it all out. You're getting rid of anything that you're not going to eat, okay, to get ready for the fasting, right? And it's really similar to what our Jewish sisters and brothers do in sweeping out the making sure that there is no yeast. Same deal. You sweep out everything that you're not going to use during the Lenten season. And it's not, before we had grocery stores, it wasn't too hard to do because when you get to February, you're getting pretty lean anyway. Okay, you're getting down to the last bits of the things that you had, and so it's not so hard to sweep it out. And then on Maundy Thursday, you extinguish your fires in your home. You prepare what you need for Friday. Friday's a fast day, and it's a meatless day. And so you prepare what you need for Friday and Saturday. Saturday would also be, because Saturday's part of this thing, Friday into Saturday. So that's also a fast day. And you prepare what you need, and then you break the fast after the vigil on Saturday. Okay? And so everything's cleared out. You don't need a fire at home. You don't have a fire at home. You extinguish it at home. And where do you get your fire relit? When do you get it relit? When does the fire get relit? At the Easter Vigil. And so people would bring containers so that they could carry the new fire from the church to their home to relight their fires. So it was very much connected. What happened in church was very much connected to what was happening in your home. And that's why I really believe that's why we don't celebrate the way that people used to celebrate, is because our liturgies, the life of our liturgies, is not connected as much with our daily lives. We're not dependent on having the fire lit at the Easter Vigil. If you had to put out your fire at home, and you weren't going to be able to cook until you had your fire lit from the Easter fire, then perhaps, it would be important for you to get to the Easter Vigil. Okay? And so it's hard to convince people that perhaps those are important liturgies for us to come to. Okay? The way those 3 days will function is they're intended for us to hear the story of salvation. Okay? All the story. So we hear the story of Jesus at the Last Supper. I learned as a Catholic that you focus on the Eucharist and you focus on priesthood. Focus on priesthood. Jesus making a whole bunch of clones, But in the Episcopal Church, what do we focus on? Washing of the feet. So, and in Roman Church, you call it Holy Thursday, okay? And in the Episcopal Church, we call it Maundy Thursday. And the word Maundy comes out of what? What word? Maundy Thursday comes out of what? That's been one of the hardest things for me to remember to say. I do it pretty well, but sometimes I slip into and say holy. Mandatum, never heard of it? a Monday, Thursday. Mandate. So what's the mandate Jesus gives on Maundy Thursday? Nope. What does Jesus tell his disciples to do? No, doesn't tell them to stop it. Celebrate the way. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, praise God, praise God. Do you need an end chair? Good deal. Oh, praise God. I'm so glad. Oh, how great. Do you need a chair gone? Do you, okay, you're going to sit on the chair? Great. Oh, it's so good to see you. Oh. Well, that's good. I'm glad you're back.
I guess from Bryn Mawr about 3 weeks, I guess.
Okay, great. So good. You're looking great.
Yeah, I still have pain. You see me gasp once in a while, but it's not bad pain. Everything's closed up where it's supposed to be.
Good. Good. Well, we've been praying and praying.
Carry with me.
Yeah.
I don't have to wear it in the house.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this whole week I don't have to wear it in the house.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's really
once I
good.
leave the door, I have to
That's good. That's good. Well, we've been praying.
continue.
Okay. So, mandate. What does Jesus mandate? What does he tell us we have to do? Do. No. Tells us to do that some other time. Do this. Do this in remembrance of me. Whenever you do this in remembrance of me. Okay? And what's he talking about doing in remembrance of him? Breaking the bread, but something else. Drinking the wine, but something even more than that. Washing the feet. That's what he wants us to do in remembrance of him. That whenever we do it in remembrance of him. To wash each other's feet. That's the key. Now, with the reading that we read on Maundy Thursday, do we have any story of the celebration of the Holy Eucharist in the Gospel? You can tell by the way I ask the question what the answer is. No. So the center part of the Gospel is the washing of the feet on Holy Thursday, Maundy Thursday. There is no telling of the consecration or the celebration of the Eucharist. And there is no telling of Jesus talking except for do this in remembrance of me. Okay? So, where in the Gospel of John does the story about Jesus talking about bread and saying the bread is his body? I am the bread of life. Where does that story come? Nope. Nope. The washing of the feet in the Gospel of John is the Last Supper. So where does it come? In the Gospel of John, only in the Gospel of John. No, it's too late. Huh? No, it's way too late. Way too late. You're going to hear it for 6 blooming weeks this year in the middle of summer because we're in the Gospel of Mark. And Mark is so blooming short. that there are not enough readings in the Gospel of Mark. And so we have 6 weeks in the middle of summer that follow along in the Gospel of John. And we have 6 weeks dedicated to this reading about the Eucharist in the Gospel of John. 6 whole weeks I have to preach straight. 6 weeks about the Holy Eucharist in the middle of the Gospel of John in the middle of summer every year. Every 3 years I preach. You weren't here. Every 3 years you're here. I am the bread of life. I am the bread of life. Those who believe in me will never die. 6 weeks of it. You've heard it. 6 weeks every 3 years. Gospel of John. When does Jesus take bread and give it to people? Gives it away to a bunch of people. Gives it away to a whole bunch of people. And a couple of fish and gives them away to a whole bunch of people. What? Sermon on the Mount. Okay? That is where the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 6 in the Gospel of John, that's where you have the Holy Eucharist happening. Okay? So if you have the Holy Eucharist happening there, then you don't repeat it at the Last Supper. You do the washing of the feet at the Last Supper. That's where you focus on it. Okay? So it doesn't happen that way in the Gospels that are more alike. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are called synoptic Gospels because you can see them. Optic, see, sin, same, see the same. Synoptic Gospels, they're alike. They tell the same sorts of stories, but John is completely different. Okay? So the 3 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they tell the story of Jesus at the Last Supper doing the taking of the bread and taking of the wine. So on Holy Thursday, when do we have this telling of the story of Jesus and the bread and the wine? Anybody know? I'll give you a candy bar if you tell me. And since I don't have a candy bar, I guess I know you're not going to tell me. Cheryl, do you know?
I missed the question, I'm sorry.
I'll tell you again. When on Maundy Thursday, in what reading do we have, because we do have it, do we have the story of Jesus taking bread? I got coffee on my, I've got another one. No. When do we have on Maundy Thursday the telling of the story of Jesus and the Holy Eucharist? Which reading? No, I just told you it wasn't the gospel. I told you there was some washing of the feet in the gospel, and then I went through six things. And yeah, it does. Which one is it? What's first reading say? It is the first reading. First reading is from the letter of Paul to the Corinthians, and it's the oldest reading about Jesus taking the bread and consecrating it and saying, "This is my body and this is my blood." It's the very first reading. It comes out of St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians.